are talking Wreck, also known as In the Woods. And this is directed and written by Ben Patterson. And this is a low budget British independent action horror movie. Well, let's tell you a little bit about what the plot synopsis here. It focuses on a pair of criminals, a woman and a guy, and they are instructed by their crime boss to deliver a briefcase to a location. This briefcase is handcuffed to the female of this criminal duo, and along their way on this route they end up crashing this kind of woodland area. The guy is killed and the female of the pair has her leg kind of trapped underneath the car, the wreck. However, this particular area seems to be home to a large Bigfoot style kind of creature that kind of looks like bad cosplay from the James Sullivan Monster Inc. character. Whatever. She's also got problems from I think a rival gang of criminals who also want a briefcase for herself. What'll happen? Well, you have to watch and find out, won't you? So, let's talk about Wreck. Now that title could be somewhat self-fulfilling, I feel. Right, this is a very low budget film. You're not going to see a good review for it, I don't think, a legitimate one. But can we say positive stuff about this film? I think you can. Some positive stuff. Alright. This film, maybe not in the way that it was intended, but it's an entertaining film. This movie entertained me. And I guess that's, you know, ironically or not, it's kind of what you want, isn't it? This is one of these kind of like, so bad it's entertaining films that, you know, B-movie fans so often enjoy. But this really is you know, on the so bad it's entertaining. The premise isn't bad, I suppose. You know, we have this more or less a kind of a single location where we have this female criminal trapped, having to defend herself both from the elements, from a creature, from, you know, unscrupulous passers-by and a criminal gang. You know, with very little to kind of defend herself. An interesting setup, I grant you. And there is maybe a kind of environmental message, I suppose, very kind of loosely in there. It's not explicitly said, but it's hinted that the creature may have been the result of fracking. There you go. There is actually one or two reasonable, practical kind of gore shots where the creature is kind of like, you know, swiping people's faces off and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, it's not a realistic level of gore here, but it's a fun level of gore. And I will say the car crash sequence was fairly well handled. Alright, okay, so let's talk about the negatives of this movie. Now, like I said, you can enjoy this movie, I think, legitimately in a kind of ironic, yeah, it's a real trashy film, and you can kind of laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. But, you know, when push comes to shove, this isn't a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's clearly very low budget, clearly kind of filmed relatively quickly. The thing I think will be the talking point here is the creature. I mean, as I've mentioned, it legitimately looks like someone has made a kind of Monsters Inc. cosplay kind of suit with next to no experience, no kind of like funding. It really does look particularly bad. It kind of looks like, if you haven't seen Monsters Inc., I guess you could say it kind of looks like a giant teddy bear with sharp teeth in a way. It is ridiculously funny. You know, the actors, this movie is played straight. This movie is played straight. There's a sequence where we have this this woman fighting this thing, and I'm thinking, do they have any idea how stupid this thing looks? Because they're kind of acting straight, but it's just like, my God. So the monster, yeah, it is ridiculously poorly put together. But I kind of love it for it. You know, I'm going to say, I'm not legitimately going to give that a good mark because of it, but I kind of loved it. And it's just so crappy in the way that it kind of like ambles around, has these kind of like these poor kind of like growling sounds, how it conveniently kind of kills everyone but the kind of our main kind of character in kind of order and things like this. It's very silly. But that this silliness doesn't stop there. This director, Ben Patterson, I believe this is his first feature. My God, he loves a drone shot. Woo! This man loves a drone shot. We get so many kind of like overhead drone shots establishing, yes, it's in the woods. I've seen 5 of these shots already. You know, kind of like the treetops. I get it. We're in the woods. So the man loves a drone shot. Now, the other thing that bothered me about this movie, well, one of the things, is that we're meant to believe this woman has her leg, or her foot really, trapped underneath this car. But the car is in a wooded area with earth on the floor. And it's like, it doesn't occur to her to try and dig her foot out. I'm just trying to kind of like brace it with a kind of a stick and things to try and push the car off. But like, just dig the earth around your foot, and you'll be able to loosen and pull it out. Just like, we see one attempt like in the 3rd act where she starts to kind of do that, but it doesn't seem to work. But I think like, well, that's the first thing you should do, surely. I mean, she's got bits and pieces. She ends up getting a knife from it at one point and thinking, why isn't this being tried? You know, and there's another sequence, for example, where she has a gun and it's a little bit kind of out of reach, but you never see her kind of like shuffle round. She's literally kind of just trying to reach you like an outstretched arm, but isn't trying to kind of move her body, isn't trying to kind of like swipe it, no, kind of drag it with a suitcase that's tied to her arm. It's just really kind of like, logistically, it's just silly. The acting here is difficult to judge because it is heavily ADR'd, which gives it this kind of falseness. It gives it this kind of like fakeness. So, you know, I can't legitimately say maybe the acting is bad, but it presents as bad because the audio is kind of fairly kind of obviously overdubbed, and it kind of gives it a very kind of you know, artificial flavour to it, which I can't really say had it. Clearly, the audio hasn't been picked up on the initial kind of shoot, but it comes across as kind of stilted and cheesy. But I don't necessarily know whether the original performance would have been better, because it's obviously the majority of lines here have been overdubbed. You know, there's not a lot to this film, and thank God it's a short running time. But even with its kind of short running time, I was a bit like, wow, there's just, you know, there's not a lot happening here. We have, you know, it's just like there's maybe 4 occasions where she kind of loses consciousness and there's lots of wakes up. Yeah, it's a silly one. It's a very silly movie. I can't legitimately say this film is good in any way. But like I mentioned, I was kind of entertained, albeit in an ironic kind of way, and you know, you're kind of laughing at it rather than with it. I think the idea here, they maybe could have tweaked it to kind of lean into the ridiculousness, and maybe actually having a giant teddy bear. The teddy bears are in the woods today, that kind of thing, and like, I just don't know why there's just a giant teddy in there, and then kind of like lent into the ridiculousnesses of it, rather than kind of try and play it straight and try and pass off this kind of fake looking creature as something that would be legitimately kind of scary. That's the route I would have gone with it, to be honest. And they were close to it. Had they just kind of, you know, made this creature look legitimately like a teddy bear, I think you could have had a funner B-movie. But as it stands at the moment, it takes itself too seriously for what it is, and ultimately is just bad because of it. 3 out of 10 for me, this one. It isn't a good film by any stretch of the imagination. You know, it's just very kind of silly. We get next to no kind of backstory or setup, really. Maybe you didn't need it, but, you know, there you go. The action sequences towards the end where we have this kind of like all these kind of sort of criminals turn up, just stupid. They just seem to be like, the fight scenes are ridiculously bad with those ones, but there you go. It's just silly. 3 out of 10, but it has some kind of funness if you like proper cheese. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.